Hello listeners, welcome back to Luke's English podcast. How are you doing today? I hope you're doing fine. So, last week, in the last episode, I published a conversation with my mum in which she talked a lot about her life, and I'm very glad to see that people seem to enjoy it a lot, which is no surprise really, because my parents have been very regular guests on this show over the years and also very popular guests with my audience, so it's no surprise that last week's episode was received well by everybody. There have been so many comments from listeners expressing their sincere appreciation for the chance to listen to my mum sharing her thoughts and feelings and memories so openly. Here's just one of those comments from Paula. Paula wrote, "You're lucky because you can still talk with your parents. Make the most of your time with them." And this sums it up very well, actually. That is the whole idea, in fact, of that episode and indeed this episode. While we're still able to spend time in conversation with our parents, we should try to ask them plenty of questions about their lives and then listen to them carefully. Listen to everything they have to say, because one day we won't have that option. Now, this is true of everyone, of course. We have to take time to appreciate our loved ones and to listen to them, our close friends, not just our parents, but everyone in our lives. We should take the time to listen to them and appreciate the people we have, and ask them things and talk to them as much as we can while we can. And that's what I wanted to do recently when I was staying with my mum and dad for a few days. And I just thought I could also make several podcast episodes that work not only as hopefully interesting episodes for you to listen to, but also a kind of record of them and their experiences. Luckily for us, luckily for me, and luckily for you too, my parents are both open enough and willing to be part of a podcast project like this. So after interviewing my mum last time, it was my dad's turn, and I pretty much planned to have more or less the same conversation with him as I had with my mum. But of course, this ended up being quite different as we followed the story of my dad's life, his upbringing, moments when he finished school and applied for a place at the prestigious Oxford University, and then began his career, and the sort of choices he made about what direction he wanted to go in his career, and then his interesting experiences working in advertising at first, and then broadcast journalism, which is what he did for the rest of his career, plus some thoughts about being a father of two boys. And so, a similar intention I had with this conversation, but obviously the results are quite different because, my dad is a different person. Yes, what a surprise. Now, I'll let you notice the differences between my dad's personal experience and my mum's. Not that this is a comparison. Anyway, I'll stop this introduction now and I'll let you get into my chat with my dad. All I want to say is that I am very lucky to be able to do this. Some people in the comments of the last episode said that for one reason or another, they couldn't do the same thing, either because of health reasons or because of issues in a relationship, or obviously because the parents are no longer with us. So I feel like I'm very lucky, and I'm mindful of that fact, that having a close conversation about personal things with my parents is not something that everyone can do. And I appreciate them both very much for doing this. If you're watching the video version of this, you will see that there is no actual video footage of the conversation. I just recorded audio, but there are subtitles on the screen, which might help you notice certain phrases being used and can help you follow the conversation more easily. There's a PDF for this episode with a full transcript of this conversation, which you can check later if you want to consolidate your learning, either simply by reading it or by searching for words and expressions that you will hear. The link for the PDF is in the description. So I will chat to you again at the end of this, but now, without further ado, here is my conversation with my dad, Rick Thompson, and here we go. Hello, Dad.
Hello, Luke.
What is this situation right now? We're sitting together. What's the general situation?
The general situation is you're in our living room, sitting in front of the fire, though the fire isn't actually lit, and you've given me a microphone and I'm holding it.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm here for the weekend. basically.
Yes. Indeed, you came over from Paris for a long weekend here, which is great. Lovely to see you. Always good to see you. Particularly useful, and you've been doing all the jobs that I can't do.
Right.
Really useful indeed.
Like what?
Changing light bulbs that are difficult to change. Removing the double glazing so we could clean behind the windows, which these are heavy.
Double glazing?
Yeah, 2 sheets of glass in the window to give insulation and keep things quiet.
But crafty spiders manage to find their way into that space.
They do. How they get in is very difficult to see because these are tiny, tiny cracks between the double glazing in the window, but they get in there and then they spin their little webs, and when the sun shines in through the window you can see all these spiders' webs in there. So you've been removing them.
The whole big piece of glass has to be removed.
That's right.
And it's quite a physical job.
And
that
it's heavy.
And then you get in with the vacuum cleaner and get rid of all of the cobwebs and stuff like that. Yes.
Exciting, isn't it?
Very exciting.
Skilled work.
Yes. I was just saying to Mum, because I recorded the conversation with Mum just earlier, and I was saying that I got a comment a few years ago on an episode that I did with Mum where we chatted in the garden about this, that and the other. And the comment from a listener called Nika 3 years ago said, "Oh, I love listening to your podcasts with your family. I love them all. And it doesn't matter what you're talking about. It's just great to hear a natural flow of your conversation. Thank you so much, Luke."
Well, that's a good thing because I don't know what we're going to talk about. I haven't the faintest idea.
I don't really know either, because one of the great things about doing a podcast, maybe doing this podcast, is that we have the freedom to just kind of go wherever we want. And I think what's interesting for listeners, although you always need to be convinced of this, is that people genuinely love listening to us.
They don't mind us rambling.
No, that's what they like. That's specifically what people like.
I can hear them out there going, "Nah, it's boring."
Well, those people can just go and listen to something else, as far as I'm concerned. There are plenty of people, and I know this because they write to me time and time again, who say that this is exactly the sort of thing that they would like to listen to.
Okay.
So you can take it from me that people are enjoying this. I get lots of comments like that. And Nika said it doesn't matter what we're talking about, and that is true, but I do have lots of questions to ask you, but we'll see where things go. Childhood, growing up, being an adult, different phases of your life, family history. These are all fascinating things, I think.
Deep things.
Mm-hmm. As Mum was saying in the conversation I had with her, I helped her get some large boxes from a high cupboard, and in it were lots of photos and albums and letters and things from the past.
Yes,
yeah,
they're absolutely fascinating. Some of them, going back into her great grandparents' time, into the late 19th century, and some great old photos. And listeners, I have to tell you that Luke's school reports from when he was aged 8 are in there, from the Lady Catherine Leveson Primary School.
Yeah, there was that. There was the reports from my primary school, and then reports from pretty much every year in secondary school, including the last year of secondary school.
Yes.
Which is when I was about 15 or 16 years old. What do you think of the reports?
Not surprising, really. I mean, they all say he's a nice enough boy, but he doesn't work very hard and underachieves. He ought to do better. Mm-hmm. Well, we heard this before.
So you remember that from the time, do you?
Oh, yeah. It was extremely frustrating for your mother and father, especially when you got a bit older and you were moving towards exams, which were quite important. Yeah, it was immensely frustrating that you wouldn't apply your time to doing your homework, for example, and you seem to think that you would just get through your exams by some kind of magic process.
Yeah, there was a lot of mistaken sort of, I don't know, how do you describe it? Is it hubris?
I suppose it is.
Is that it?
Well, yeah, kind of overconfidence.
Yeah, or an assumption that I would just find somehow the results would just be on a plate. I don't know why I thought that. I just sort of had a sort of weird misplaced confidence in myself, I suppose, or it was laziness or something.
It was laziness. Actually, wasn't that. It was because you were too busy doing all sorts of other things.
You think?
I think so. Yeah.
Like what?
And well, I don't know. You already getting into a bit of music and playing music with your friends.
That was my A levels, when I was 18 age. Yeah, definitely. I was totally distracted then.
When you were younger, there probably wasn't much excuse. You should have didn't particularly want to do it.
No, I wasn't particularly mentally disciplined, I suppose. But you did very well at school, didn't you?
I did okay. I mean, I could have done better, but I did okay.
I think
my parents were probably fiercer than we were. I should have beaten you, but
they didn't beat you. They didn't beat you, did they?
No, they didn't. But my mother in particular was fairly fierce. And, I wasn't allowed to watch the television until I'd done my homework and, all that stuff. And they were quite encouraging, but you couldn't possibly go back to school the next day without having done your homework. That was absolutely impossible.
Yeah. You've said before that you were even... I don't know if locked in a room with your homework is the right way to put it.
It's I don't know whether the lock was actually turned click, but I was certainly put into what was then the back room where we lived, and the door was shut, and I wasn't supposed to come out until I'd finished my homework. And of course, that's helpful discipline because you can just get on with it, and it doesn't take all that long.
And in the back room, you didn't really have any distractions.
Nope.
It was just you and a table and the homework. Yeah. That's very important to learn.
Anyway, so, well, enough of this subject. I mean, I think most people would say I could have worked better at school, don't they? But certainly you and your brother, you were not the best at applying yourselves to your schoolwork.
No. Were your parents strict?
Fairly strict.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, they were very good. My mum and dad were really, really good parents, and my brother and I appreciated that. But my mum in particular, expected us to do this, expected us to do that, and we had to behave, and we had to. I don't know. It was. I don't know whether you call it strict or whether it was just firmness. I think they were firm about things.
Did you ever get into trouble?
Oh yeah, we all get into trouble.
Like what?
Oh, I don't know. How far back do you want to go?
No, just don't know. I'd love to know about a time when maybe your mum and dad got really angry with you and punished you. Just because it's a good story often.
Well, I can go all the way back to when I was really small. When we lived up in Leeds in the north of the country. And one thing that sort of lived with me was the fact that...
What kind of age is that then?
I think I would be about 6 or 7.
Okay.
And cars were quite unusual in that part of Leeds. Anyway, I mean, it wasn't the richest part of the world, and cars coming up and down our quiet road was quite something.
We're talking about the 1950s here, listeners.
We're talking about the early 1950s.
This is not. We're not talking about when cars were invented.
No, we're talking about the 50s, but there weren't so many. And when a car came up the road, on one occasion, I had a piece of wood in my hand.
Yeah.
And as it came past, I tried to throw the piece of wood underneath the car so it would come out the other side. Unfortunately, it hit the car. And of course, I ran home, but the driver, followed me and knocked on the door and said, "Your son has been throwing things at my car." So I was in trouble.
Was the car damaged? Do you remember?
Can't remember. I doubt it. It wasn't a brick. It was a bit of wood.
Right. So you weren't throwing, to be fair to you, you weren't throwing wood at the car.
Explain that to the driver.
You were trying to throw it under, this furious driver.
Yeah.
And so how did your parents...
I can't really remember, but they sent him away and la-di-da, and I was in trouble. But I can't remember any more than the fact that I was absolutely terrified of this man coming after us.
Yeah. Yeah.
What else when I was in trouble? I don't know.
Stuff like that, isn't it?
Stuff like that.
Yeah. That's interesting.
No, I was very small.
Mm-hmm. So yesterday, because we had this conversation after having brought down some of those boxes and we looked through some of the pictures, a lot of it's like my mum's stuff.
Yes,
so
it is.
Her dad. It's stuff that we got from my granddad from Dennis when he died. So we got a lot of his old photo albums and his diaries and pictures and letters and stuff like that. So a lot of it's my mum's stuff, but we did have this conversation about what it made us think about. And one of the things that you both said, and you have said numerous times, is why didn't I ask my grandparents Why didn't I ask my parents and grandparents more?
Definitely, right? Yes.
Yeah, which I'm sure is a common thing that everyone thinks at different times. You know, you look back and you when someone is gone, you regret not having asked them various things. Why do you think we don't ask people? Why don't we ask our parents and grandparents these questions?
I don't really know. I think we are wrapped up in ourselves when we're growing up, and there is a generation gap. You're into whatever you're into. The parents are simply there and have to be kind of appeased. They provide the food. I'm not really sure why, but I don't think you're mature enough to put things into perspective. I was a baby boomer. You know what a baby boomer is? The generation born quite soon after the Second World War, and there was a boom in babies being born for obvious reasons. I once saw a graph of the number of kids being born, and I'm right at the top of it, March 1947.
Yeah.
And as a baby boomer, we had a particular separation between our generation and our parents' generation, that we were born into this period where the food was better, rationing was finishing, we had free education, free health care. The National Health Service was launched in 1947. And we were very, very fortunate. And the parents wanted the best for us. They'd gone through 6 years of war, terrifying, really. And I think that this generation may have been a bit indulged in, or a little bit spoiled, if you like. But we had a lot of freedom, and things changed quite rapidly. So we got into the 50s, late 50s, rock and roll arrived. What on earth is rock and roll, thinks my father, I imagine, you know.
Do you know how he felt about...
he was very supportive of us. My brother and I both liked music, but we didn't really get into the Elvis Presley thing. We got into the 60s, early 60s.
The British sort of 60s.
The British pop scene.
The Shadows.
Yeah. Definitely Cliff Richard and the Shadows, and then it was the Beatles big time, and Rolling Stones and all the other bands and everything else, and all the kids wanted to have guitars. They all wanted to play in bands, and of course I did.
So what's the difference between that and the whole Elvis thing?
I don't know. I think the Elvis thing was, a lot of the parents seemed to be a bit hostile to it.
Because it was rebellious, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And they didn't like the sexuality of it.
Yeah.
Overtly sexual. I thought he was a bit unsavoury, the girl screaming at him, waving his legs about. And that he was followed by the rock and rollers who sort of thought they were quite hard, you know.
It was a bit violent, wasn't it? Because they were like Teddy Boys.
That's right.
Teddy Boys, it was a sort of a subculture in the late 50s. And they wore these sort of Edwardian frock coats and had their hair done in that 50s rockabilly style.
They did. There was a little bit guys. There was a bit of a reaction to that in Britain because there were mods and rockers. The rockers wore motorbikes and wore leather, and the mods wore sharp clothes and rode scooters.
Yeah.
And they used to have fights on the beach at Brighton, the mods and the rockers. But the mods were the people who supported the Who, and they I think the parents probably were much less worried about the bands like the Beatles because they were sort of nice.
Yeah.
And amusing, and quite good to listen to, and they appealed to everybody.
Yeah.
And I think it was a kind of a wave of good feeling, which was reflected by all the other stuff that happened in the 60s, the colourful clothes, and it was a lot of freedom that our parents and their parents could never have experienced, really.
So your dad was really supportive of the fact that you and your older brother liked to play music, and you got into bands that were playing guitar music, and your dad was pretty supportive of that.
Yes, he was. It was mainly me. I mean, I got into some bands when I was really quite young, and he would load my drums into his car and take me off to practice or to a performance, and then come and collect me in the evening. I mean, it's very nice of him, really.
You had drums. You had a drum kit.
Yes, I did. I collected drums that I could afford. It started off being a real rough old drum kit.
Yeah.
With one of those big bass drums as opposed to the little ones.
Right.
Because I couldn't afford the little ones. They were the new ones.
Yeah.
And a snare drum and a couple of the hi-hat and a cymbal, and that was it to start off with. But I started accumulating a better drum kit.
Well, that's good. It was nice that he was supportive.
Yeah, he was. And my parents were both very musical. My mum was a very good pianist, not a classical pianist. She just, I think she was probably self-taught or taught by her mother.
Yeah.
More likely. And she used to play popular songs of the time, and did it really well with a lot of feeling and touch and everything else.
Yeah.
And she used to perform a lot, with things like the hockey club and the Women's Institute and things like that. She was called Olive. Play us a tune, Olive. And so she'd sit at the piano and go, when the red, red robin goes bob, bob, bobbing along, ding, 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 ding.
She could do the bass part with her left hand. She would do the other chords with her right hand. She was great. And didn't she have perfect pitch?
Yes, she did, which is quite clever. It means that if you asked her to sing a certain note, she could do it.
I remember her being in the living room and I would be in the other room with the piano, and I'd play a note on the piano and she could tell me what note it was.
Exactly.
So
she came from a very musical family. Her two sisters were musical too.
Yeah.
And I think it's great to have music in the family, and you know that because you are very musical and both your kids like music.
Yes, that's right. I want to try and encourage them to play music.
I learned the piano with my older brother and me. We both had piano lessons when we were small, and the piano teacher was really horrible. I mean, she was like something out of a Roald Dahl film, She had sort of warts on her nose, and was not very good looking. And she used to come to the house to give us our piano lessons. She was called Miss Lambourne. If you're out there, Miss Lambourne, I haven't forgotten.
Was she young, old?
No, what? She was. She felt very old to me because I was learning the piano when I was 6.
Yeah,
and she used to always have a glass of sherry.
Really?
When we were doing our piano lessons, yes.
And alcohol.
Or maybe it was ginger wine, but it was a little glass of this was presented to her. And if you got your scales wrong, she would hit your knuckles with a ruler.
Oh, wow.
Wonderful way of teaching you.
Yeah.
Not.
Really instilling a love of piano playing.
And we moved from up north down to London, and we both refused to continue with our piano lessons because of the experience we'd had with Miss Lambourne. No, we're not doing piano lessons anymore. Now, that's a regret, really, because I would love to be able to play the piano.
Yes. Well, you did continue to play music. We'll maybe talk about that in a moment. Let me just ask you about your mum and dad, though. They lived through World War II.
Indeed.
Your dad was in the army. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Because I know less about him, really, because I never met him.
He died early, folks.
Yeah, he
was 56.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway, yes, he was pretty much a self-made man, my dad. His father, who lived with us for a while, my grandpa Thompson. Frank Barley Thompson. It's a good name.
From Leeds in Yorkshire.
From Ripon.
Ripon in Yorkshire.
In North Yorkshire. He had a very strong Yorkshire accent, and he had a tailor's shop in Ripon, and before that did various things, I think, connected with the countryside. I think he worked for a blacksmith for a while and a butcher's for a while. Anyway, my dad went to the grammar school. He qualified in certain things and finished up being a planning officer. He was an engineer.
Civil engineer.
A civil engineer.
Which means someone who plans roads and towns.
Yeah.
Infrastructure.
That's right.
Infrastructure in towns and...
And of course, at the time, there was a lot of building going on. The bombed cities needed new homes, and they were building flats and council houses, and he was busy doing that, first of all, up in Yorkshire, and then he moved down to London to work for the government in the Ministry of Housing and Local Government, to start off with, and planning new towns, and then the Ministry of Transport planning motorways.
Because that's after the war. There was a lot of rebuilding going on, so there would have been work for him. But then during the war, His skills in civil engineering were used, weren't they?
Yes, he went into the Royal Engineers.
Right.
And he was commissioned as an officer.
Uh-huh.
Most of the war, he was a Major Thompson.
Major, really?
Yeah.
Wow. That sounds
But he
impressive.
finished up being, at the end of the war, he went into the Territorial Army, the part-timers, as a lieutenant colonel. He was Colonel Thompson.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Anyway, unlike your mother's father,
Dennis,
who was a frontline
infantry soldier.
regiment, D-Day landings and, fighting their way towards Berlin, a horrible experience. My dad was sent to France when Germany declared war, and when they overwhelmed everything, heading for Paris, he was evacuated not to Dunkirk, but westwards.
A lot of British soldiers who initially went to France to fight against the Nazis and then had to escape.
Indeed,
because they got pushed all the way back to the north coast until they got to Dunkirk.
Yeah.
Then they managed to find their way back to...
Famous evacuation by lots of civilian little boats that went to collect them.
Yeah, and then later, a few years later, the Allies then invaded France again on D-Day.
That's right.
So, but your dad was in France in that early part.
On. He was evacuated west to, I think, Saint-Lazare. Is that the place? Or no? Can't remember. On the west coast somewhere. Got onto a warship and was brought home.
Okay.
But he was then assigned to doing major engineering work connected with the war, and the first place he was sent to was Iceland.
He went to Iceland?
Yeah, the island of Iceland.
Yeah. And
there was censorship on what you could say to your family about where you were. And he sent a letter back to my mother saying, it's C, not R, because he thought he was either going to Ireland or might even go to Iceland.
Oh, I see. So it's either Ireland, meaning the Republic of Ireland,
correct,
or it's Iceland, and he wrote C, meaning
C,
ice,
not R.
R, not R, meaning Ireland, but it was Iceland. Okay.
And the reason he went there was that the Allies needed to have a military base there, and he supervised the building of a military airstrip at Reykjavik, the capital. It's still there.
Wow.
So, having built the airstrip at Iceland, and the conditions must have been pretty chilly. He came back to, I don't know, do some stuff. He for a while he was seconded to the artillery unit, Royal Artillery. And I know he had two ties after the war, the artillery tie and the engineer's tie.
Right, okay.
Depended on what function he was going to, which one he would actually wear. So he did work with the artillery for some time. I'm not quite sure why. I don't think he was trying to pop at Luftwaffe planes over London, but he may have been manning defensive positions somewhere else.
Yeah.
Anyway, before long, he was sent off to build another airstrip, and that one was in the Pacific.
Wow.
And the Cocos Islands.
Where's that?
Cocos Islands, well, that's good question. Miles from anywhere in the Pacific.
Yeah.
And the reason for that was that they knew they were going to have to fight the Japanese, and they wanted to have an air base on the Cocos Islands.
Wow.
Not many inhabitants on the islands.
Okay, so I can tell you where it is. It's kind of off the coast, far off the coast of Indonesia.
Yeah.
Basically go from Jakarta and head kind of south west.
It's a dot in the middle of the Pacific.
It's right out into the middle of the Pacific. Yeah.
So that's quite a contrast with Iceland, and you know, they slept in hammocks and under the palm trees. It was hot, and all that, and so that was not the hardest war.
It's the Indian Ocean, technically.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Anyway.
Yeah. So that's pretty much as much we know, and obviously it wasn't quite as horrendous as Jill's father's war. But he was away a long time, and it must have been strange coming home.
Yeah.
And my brother was born during the war.
Right.
So he was conceived on leave, obviously, as many of them were.
Yeah.
He was born in 1943, and it must have been weird when this bloke in uniform came home in 1948, I think it was.
Whoa, really? So he was 5 when he first met?
No, not 48. 46, I think it was the year
Right.
after the war finished.
So he would have been 3 years old when he first met his dad.
That's right, probably.
Gosh, that's amazing.
So I would have liked to have asked him about that. I mean, that's what you were saying, that what would you have asked him? Lots of it. I would have liked to have asked him much more about what you did in Iceland. What was it like? What did you do how did you get there? How did you hear about where you were going?
Yeah, what did you see?
What did you see?
Because that would have been an extraordinary journey to go out to the Cocos Islands.
Yes.
In the middle of the Indian Ocean. He would have seen all sorts of incredible things, like even just animals and stuff.
Well, they had rats on the island. Must have been obviously brought in by Europeans, I guess.
Sailors, yeah.
But they used to poop off at them with their rifles.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know much. He came home with a collection of exotic shells, beautiful shells.
Right.
And a wooden sailing boat made by one of the indigenous people there. Really nice, which obviously he'd bought. And then he's, went back to work. And my mum was a teacher. And she was a teacher at the primary school I went to in Yorkshire, teaching piano as well as anything else.
Yeah.
A few other things, being a class teacher. And they were very, very nice to my brother and me. We were very fortunate.
When you left school, you then went on to do A-levels, which are qualifications that...
I did it while I was at school.
You did them, okay, you just continued at school, did your A-levels at school?
Yes.
And then it was time to try and get into university.
Yeah.
What do you remember about that time?
Well, my older brother had, amazingly enough, gone to Oxford, top university.
Why you say amazingly enough?
Because he wasn't particularly academic, and he didn't get very good A-level results. And I've always suspected that they took him in on the basis of the interview, because in those days they interviewed everybody who'd applied, and he would have been good in an interview. And he had a very interesting teenage life, writing plays and being as a senior scout, as a troop leader, and one thing and another, all a natural leader. And he was very good at sport, so he played football for the best school football team in the country, and he played basketball at a very high level, and all these things made the fact that his A-level results weren't very good less important in those days. And that's what, Oxford did put a lot of score on the individual's character, what they were like.
Right.
Particularly this college. This was the St. Catherine's College, which was a new college, invented by a historian called Alan Bullock, who was also a Yorkshireman. And it was built in that period when Danish design buildings, new type buildings, were being built around the place. And it's a fantastic building to this day. And the principle was that it would take more kids from state schools as opposed to private schools, and it would have a broader curriculum. And in fact, they did engineering, amongst other things. So it's the kind of college that would have they would like to have Peter there. So him having gone there, and I went to visit him as a schoolboy.
I should say also that he was the first person of his family ever to get into Oxford, of course, but university too? Did your dad go to university?
My mother's sister went to university.
Right.
She was very clever. No, that was it. Certainly on my father's side. Yeah, I mean, in our family, he was the first one.
Was that not a big deal?
Yes, it was quite a big deal.
Were your parents incredibly proud?
Yes, they were. I'm sure my dad was really pleased. And so...
Did you? How many years older than you was he?
He was three and a half years older, three and a bit years older.
Did you feel like you had a lot of pressure to follow in his footsteps, or did it make it
pressure,
easier?
But I put the pressure on myself.
Yeah.
I thought, well, if he can do it, I can too.
So you're competitive.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So did it make it easier though?
Well,
because you thought he's already done something, so I just do the same thing.
If he can, I can.
Right.
So,
okay.
And the system then was that you took your A-levels, and then if the school approved, you would stay on for one term and do the joint entrance exam for Oxford and Cambridge, because they were the elite universities and they had their own entrance exam.
This is what you had to do, though.
This is what I had to do.
Yeah, okay.
So just before Christmas, before I did leave school, I took that exam. Okay.
This is before you even got your A-level results.
No, after I'd got them.
You got your
my A-level results. Stay on for a bit to do their entrance exam.
Right, I see.
If they like the look of you,
yeah,
and they think you've written something interesting, they invite you for an interview.
Right.
And I went to my interview.
So this is, just to be clear, this is you also went for an interview at Oxford University.
Yeah, at St Catherine's College, Oxford.
The same college.
Same college.
Same college your brother went to. And they took you in for an interview. Your A-level results were a bit better than your brother's, though.
They certainly were. His were rotten.
What do you mean? Do you remember what they were?
He got 2 A-levels. Only 2.
Normally people get 3.
Or 4.
Or 4, right? He got 2.
He just got 2, and neither of them was an A or a B.
Wait, he got 2, meaning the third one, did he take a third one and fail it?
Yes.
So he got, like, F?
Yes.
And the other 2?
I think they were the equivalent of a C and a D.
Okay. Well, it's surprising that Oxford took him on.
It is rather, isn't it?
Because that, by today's standards, that's a dismal failure,
definitely
really.
a dismal failure. But anyway, the fact is they did.
Okay.
And my results were better than that.
Do you remember what you got?
I think I got B, C, D, D, I think.
So you took 4?
Yes.
Do you remember what they were?
I do. English, French, geography, and art.
English, French, geography, and art. So you got a B or something at French A-level?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
Can you believe?
Yeah, I can.
I know. You forget everything. Anyway, I went off to this interview, which was very bizarre, because I was interviewed in a room with the English professors, and they were both rather eccentric, to say the least.
Yeah. Were they?
Like.
What do they look like?
One was slumped in his chair. It was his room. And he had snow white hair and chain smoked, Kensitas untipped, I remember.
Cigarettes, yeah.
And had a habit of letting the ash drop on his front. So he had a lot of ash down his front.
Is he an really old guy? Then?
Yeah, he was quite old.
Yeah, okay.
And the other one was a bit younger, was sort of stockily built, had wispy hair, and didn't sit down. He walked about all the time, paced up and down.
Did you get the impression they were sort of what's the word for it? Intimidating, frightening characters, or were they friendly? Or
well, I don't know. It was a bit intimidating because every now and then the one who was walking about would spin on his heel and fire a question at you. What do you mean by melodrama? You know, and so on. Anyway, I managed to get through that experience. I found it quite amusing, really. I remember coming out and thinking, they're mad. But they were both very brilliant. And so then I had to wait until the following September to go to university.
So it took you a year just to apply, just to go through the application process, right? An academic year, right? Because you finished your A-levels in the summer, May, June of the 1 year. Then you had your summer holiday. Then in September you started preparing for the application process for Oxford, and then you had your interview later on that year, and then you had to wait until the following what?
Well, the academic year started in I think beginning of October, end of September.
Oh, I see. So you didn't have to wait a full year.
No, but you left school at Christmas. But you
left school at Christmas
after I'd done the entrance exam.
Right. Okay. So yeah, sorry to bang on about this, but I'm trying to work out the timeline. You finish school with your A-levels in the summer. You get your results during the summer holidays. Then in September of that year, you start preparing to take the Oxford entry exam and all the rest of it. You take that in December of that year, and then you have to wait until the following September, October to actually start at Oxford.
Yes.
So what did you do with the rest of that time?
Well, that's the point. I mean, first of all, I decided to earn a bit of money by serving petrol on the forecourt of the local garage.
Okay. What was that like?
Oh, I don't seem to remember the jet petrol was 4.11 a gallon.
£4
4 shillings and 11 pence. That's just nearly 5 shillings, which is actually a quarter of a pound.
Yeah, 25p.
25p.
So shilling was about 5p.
That's right.
Yeah, so
25p a gallon. A gallon, not a litre. Anyway, I then cleaned the cars in the showroom. Then I started driving their Land Rover to collect parts
You were
for the garage.
17, 18, 19?
18.
18.
And then I sold a car.
So they sold cars at this garage as well?
Oh, yeah, they had a showroom.
How did you sell it? You just accidentally
I was
sold
cleaning the showroom.
You were cleaning the
one
showroom?
lunchtime.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the salesman was on his lunch break.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy came in and looked around the car and started asking me questions about it, So, what's this like? I said, oh, nice little car. It was called a Hillman Imp.
Yeah.
And it had an engine at the back. It was rather unusual.
British car.
Yeah, not a very good British car.
Mm-hmm.
And so I chatted him up and everything else. And
He said, look, it's got 4 wheels.
Yes. I can't remember what I said, but the end result was that he said, well, put me down for one. Then I said, fine, name and address, wrote it all down on the forms. And I said, if you come back tomorrow, we can have one ready for you, da-di-da-di-da-di-da. And the salesman came back from his lunch break and I said, oh, I've sold a car.
Yeah, yeah.
And he was rather cross.
Really? Because
Yes.
you took his commission?
No, I didn't take his commission. He took the commission.
Right, okay. But why was he cross?
I don't know, really.
Well,
you would have thought he'd say, well done, Richard. But he didn't. He said, you shouldn't be doing that. That's my job, blah, blah, blah.
Right, okay.
Anyway, after that, I was delivery driving new cars.
Delivery driving new cars?
Getting them from a wholesaler, bringing them to the garage, or taking them to the customer.
Yeah.
And then getting public transport back.
Okay.
Bus.
So just driving new cars around.
One of them was a great big Jaguar, a Jaguar Mark 10.
Jaguar Mark 10, right.
It was huge. And so I did that for a bit. And my father was instrumental in saying, well, you should use this time better.
Yeah.
And he knew somebody who worked for the Times newspaper, and he asked him if he could take me on as a trainee of some kind. No, they didn't do that, but he knew somebody else who knew somebody else, and I finished up going into London to be interviewed by an advertising agency.
Oh, yeah.
They were called Clifford Bloxham and Partners, or otherwise known as Bloxhams. And this was in 1966, and it was in the time when it was swinging London.
You in Soho as well, wasn't it?
And it was right in the middle of it, just off Carnaby Street, along up St Martin's Lane.
How exciting.
And it was exciting. And they asked me to write some stuff based on advertising, which I did. And then they took me on for just under 6 months before I had to leave and do something else. And
Go to Oxford.
Well, I had a little adventure with my brother before that.
In the summer holiday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I found the advertising agency thing very, very interesting. And again, I was lucky. I keep being lucky about these things in that I was attached to copywriters for 6 weeks at a time, 3 of them. Copywriter being... They have a system in advertising, I don't know whether it's the same now, where you have account executives who look after the clients.
Mm-hmm.
And you have copywriters who work, in effect, to the account executives.
Yeah.
The creatives, they have to offer up what the campaigns and what they think the product should be presented
Essentially
like.
writing the text for the advertisements.
Yeah.
Often, and maybe including descriptions of what images would look like in posters and things, but often writing lines of text or even writing quick phrases and things like that.
Yes, the written stuff, in newspapers, magazines, specialist magazines in particular, and then posters, on the street, hoardings,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And this company decided it wanted to get into producing TV commercials. And I was working with this copywriter, offering up suggestions for commercials. They were very good. If you were very young, they thought this was a good thing. It was the time when, being young was good. Mm-hmm. You can relate to young people.
Right, I can imagine. Richard Thompson, right, so how old are you? 18, 19? Jolly good, right.
Jolly good, yes.
I'm sure that you're perfect. Just write us an advertisement for, blah, blah, blah. You understand young people.
Yes.
You're a teenager, right?
That kind of thing. And anyway, the bloke I was working for fell ill when they'd arranged everything for a TV commercial. And so they said, well, you know what you're doing. You go and produce it. So I went off to this house in Richmond in Surrey where they filmed this commercial with a rather horrible little boy. It was a Triang train for toddlers.
A toy train.
A toy train.
That was the product.
It was called the Big Train.
The Big Train.
The Big Train, because it was quite big.
Right.
And it had a feature where you didn't have to build a loop of track because it had, listen to this, a boomerang switch on each end. And so the train would go along, and when it reached the end, it would come back again. So it could keep doing up and down, and you could go and have your tea. Anyway, so the commercial had French windows and a garden and a pond.
Right.
And the track went up to the pond.
The track went out of the house through the what we call French windows, which is basically doors with windows in them that open out into the garden. Yeah. And the track went out of the house through the windows, through the garden to the pond. And then it stopped.
And then it had a boomerang switch, so it didn't go into the pond, it came back again.
Right.
And the commercial had the little boy setting it all off, following the train, and then, it's going to go in the pond. But no, it boomerangs back.
Great.
Isn't that brilliant?
It's a good advert.
Anyway, having produced that, they accepted my storyboards for 2 more. So,
wait, did you storyboard that commercial then?
Not that one.
You just produced it, but you understood how it worked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this was the toys account. Triang were a big maker of toys, and they had the Triang account. And I did another one about a product called Trick Track, and then they did another one.
Yeah.
So,
but you liked advertising then, did you?
Well, yes and no. I had a very good time, and they gave me lots of responsibility, and it was amazing, really. But at the end of the day, I thought it was all a bit ridiculous, a bit trivial. At the end of university, the sort of careers advice people suggest where you might apply for work and everything else.
And you did a degree in English literature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, well, you've got this experience, you've got a portfolio. I had a big folder with all the stuff I'd written in the newspapers.
Yeah, great experience.
And I had 2 cans of film, which were my commercials,
Oh, my God. Yeah.
So they said, oh, well. And I was sent off to the big advertising companies, not WWII, but Benson and Bowles, S&H Benson, and can't remember, another one, to go through their interview process. And I got offered a job, quite a decent job.
This is when you graduated, sort of 3 years later.
Yeah. But I'd also applied to the BBC trainee scheme. Mm-hmm. And I finished up being a regional trainee in BBC News, working in Birmingham for very little money indeed. But I didn't want to really go into advertising.
Why was working for the BBC for not very much money more attractive than advertising?
I think it's idealism. I wanted to do something which was worthwhile. Mm-hmm. And it may seem a bit ridiculous, but devoting your life to selling soap powder or toothpaste didn't seem to me to be particularly worthwhile. And the BBC seemed more interesting.
Yeah.
And I also didn't like some of the people in advertising. I was probably rather arrogant teenager, I bet I was. But they seemed to me to be useless, some of these people. And they also seemed to be very unwilling to go out on a limb and try something different.
Right.
I don't know whether your audience is interested in all this stuff
from
a long time ago. I mean, I'll give you an example. They had quite a portfolio of different clients, and one of them was Florida orange juice.
Okay.
Now, Florida orange juice, this was American. They had orange juice in the States. It wasn't traditional in our country to have orange juice in the morning. So people had to be introduced to the idea of orange juice in the morning. And these things came in little concentrated orange cans.
Yep.
Florida orange juice.
Yeah.
And, you just diluted it and had your morning orange.
You opened the can, poured some into a glass, and then added some water to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they were doing the usual thing. They used to have, put it out amongst the staff. We need ideas. And I was included in that. I would stick my ideas in.
This is when you worked in advertising after
when I was
university.
working for Bloxham's.
Okay.
No,
this is back in
when I was working for them before I went to university.
Right.
And I had this idea that you could do a big poster campaign, and that the first of all, the posters would appear and they'd be all orange, and in the middle of it would say "Think Orange."
Ah, that's very modern, isn't it?
And then you just leave them there. Mm-hmm. Intriguing. And then after a couple of weeks, you put posters over them saying, think Florida orange with a picture of the product for a fresh start.
Oh, that's great. I mean, that reminds me of the sorts of campaigns they do these days, where they drop in some sort of viral thing that makes you curious, and then
I thought it was a good idea.
Yeah, it is a good idea. Yeah,
and no,
they didn't take it.
No, we don't do that. No,
because the idea of spending that many weeks with just Think Orange on a poster, because for them, you can't spend money just putting that without the name of the product on it.
I think it must have been that. I can't quite remember, Luke. It's a long time
I'm sure
ago.
It's something like
but
that.
I was rather frustrated by the fact that advertising was full of people who didn't have any imagination.
Yeah, I could see
But
that.
anyway, I'm sure it's changed a great deal because, the 60s shook everything up. And art became much more radical, music became more radical, and I imagine the advertising agencies got more creative at that time, as opposed to, housewives holding up a washing powder and saying, surf gets your washing whiter.
Yeah.
It's changed a lot since those days.
It's changed a lot, and it's also become a lot more sophisticated in the way that it uses all sorts of psychological techniques to get what it wants, to make people buy things. But okay, so you chose to do...
I went into BBC News.
BBC News. And did you have a specific idea of what you wanted to do? What was your... Because these days, when you get a job or when you are being appraised in your job every 6 months or something like that, you talk about having a 5-year plan. Did you have any sense of a 5-year plan? Did you know how you wanted your career to progress?
No, I don't think so. I just got thrown in there, and it was very much... Even though you're called a trainee, there wasn't really any training. And I was chucked out on the street in my first week at work with a camera crew and a tape recorder over my shoulder to do a report.
And a microphone.
Yes. Yeah. I didn't really know how it worked. But fortunately, the cameraman, who became a friend, taught me through it and told me how to write a script that would go with the pictures and all that.
So you went out to do a report and you interviewed a couple of people, and then you had to take the footage and the audio footage back to the BBC.
It was
and
film.
You had to create a report.
It was film. There was audio on the film. It was called COMAG, Combined Magnetic Tape, and it was a bit difficult to edit because the sound and the picture were out of sync.
2 different tapes.
But the tape recorders, because I was doing it for radio as well. So I had to learn how to edit radio tapes, 1/4-inch tape, and everything else. So it was quite a tough learning curve.
And a lot of it, the challenge is to write a report that fits the video footage. If it's for TV, video footage as well, and it has to be a certain number of minutes. Similarly for radio, you've got to do your report in a certain number of minutes.
Yes, or seconds. Maybe a news report on radio might only be 45 seconds.
Right, so it's really, in terms of language, you've really got to work on a lot of control and choosing your words very carefully and being clear and being able to communicate with the general public and stuff.
I've obviously, over the years, I've learned this technique, and later on, after I'd left the BBC, I was training young journalists and coaching them and how to do it. But it is interesting language-wise because radio and television are very different. For a start, you consume radio through your ears, and the overwhelming attention on TV is through your eyes. And the images are very powerful. There's been experiments about that, how much of your brain, people getting wired up, how much of your brain's attention is on the visuals and how much is on what you're hearing. Visuals dominate. And so your commentary is almost like a caption to a cartoon, right? So you can imagine the cartoon shows Lois Lane in trouble on the top of the skyscraper. Help, help. And then you have Superman saying, I hear you, Lois. And then the next one is, he's flying on my way. And then, oh, thank you, Superman. Well, the captions on a film are shot. What do we need the audience to know on this shot?
You don't necessarily say what they can see.
It doesn't have to be a sentence, and it certainly doesn't have to describe too much. So you can say, things like dawn and the tanks are on the move. You can do captions to the pictures as opposed to a narrative on radio where you have to describe it.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that you can break with chronology in radio, like in newspapers. They very often start with the key thing.
Yeah.
It was in the last minute that so-and-so came up with the equalizer.
That's the most important part of the story.
And that's the way you start.
Yeah.
But if you did that on TV, it would be all the wrong way around. Like, here he is scoring the equalizer. Earlier, this happened,
Yeah.
Well, TV tends to be a chronology. And I used to tell people, don't break the chronology.
Just keep it linear.
It's a linear story.
Yeah.
And I think that's fairer as well. Because if you have a riot or a demonstration and it all turns nasty at the end, you might think, oh, those are the best pictures, we'll start with them. But it's not fair. The story is it was a peaceful march and then some people broke away and it got a bit nasty. That's what happened.
But a newspaper report or a radio report, as you said, tends to start with exactly what happened and then it breaks down the details.
It may start with what they think is the most grabby, exciting moment.
It's more like importance or relevance first, and then you get into slightly more unspecific details.
I'm afraid that happens too often because I think it means you're not in context. You want to understand what you're seeing in context.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's very interesting. We're getting into talking about communication and visual communication and how the medium affects the way that we communicate and stuff like that. So these are all things that you learned and that you got really into. Because you can see that that happens in advertising, but somehow the reason you're doing it is not quite as satisfying as working in news, which has this sense of a sense of civic duty to it, that you're providing a genuinely useful service, and there's something.
The process was fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But I didn't think I wanted to spend my life doing it.
Advertising.
Quite. Yeah. I must tell you another anecdote about advertising. You'll like this one. This is when I was working for Bloxham's just after I'd left school and before I went to university, and how they seemed to think it was really good to have a schoolboy amongst their ranks because I understood young people. Well, I told the guy who fell ill and I took over producing his TV commercial. The same guy had lined up another TV commercial, which was extremely boring.
Yeah.
And it was for a fridge, and it was called Cold Space. And the big attraction of this Cold Space refrigerator by GEC was that it had more cold space. Now talk me through that one. Does it mean it's bigger?
Just more fridge.
And that's what they did. The commercial showed the fridge, and it had graphics showing dairy products on the top shelf and, other stuff here and milk in the door and everything else. And the commentary was saying things like, GEC cold space refrigerator, more cold space, more space for your dairy products.
Yeah, I get the idea. Like more cold space, it tells you that there's more space, and it also reminds you that this is a refrigerator.
It was really, really dull. Anyway, they wanted me to go along to a sound studio in Dean Street, and supervise the recording of the music that would go with this.
Oh wow! Okay. Yeah.
And 28 seconds.
This is like a little orchestra or something like that?
A collection of freelance guys who were very talented.
Playing.
And they booked a leading musician of the day who did lots of backing tracks for pop singers and other stuff, called Johnny Arthey. And Johnny Arthey's band were there in small numbers.
Yeah.
So I turn up and they are drinking champagne. And I say, oh, this is the way it is it? And they say, no, a special occasion. We've just heard that we're number one. And I said, what's that? And it was Dusty Springfield. They
really?
Dusty Springfield.
I wonder which song.
Say you love me.
You didn't have to say you love me. They did the backing music for that.
Yeah.
Wow. And they were drinking champagne because they just learned
it was going to be number one.
It was number one. Okay.
So then
you had to deal with a half-drunk...
No, they were all right. They were fine. And then he sits down at the piano And it says, well, I thought it would go like this. And he said, buy GEC and you can't go wrong. Right? Buy GEC and you can't go wrong.
It's not bad.
And then it went into a fugue. So it was dang, 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 dang. Because there weren't any lyrics. It's dang, 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 like a fugue. And it finished. And I thought, well, that's pretty clever. So I had this conversation with the great Johnny Arthey, and I said, really good, but it sounds like Bach. I mean, it sounds too much like Bach. Mm-hmm. It could have been a bit of Bach.
Yeah.
Why don't you try a saxophone in there? He said, right. One of his blokes put down his, whatever it was, flute, and picked up his saxophone, and they did it again. And it went down, 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 down. The saxophone. It's a completely different vibe.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, so I had a great time doing this stuff, but I didn't want to do it for life.
Yeah. Then you went to university, went to Oxford for 3 years at St Catherine's College between the years of 1966 and 1969. But even before, or 8, and even before 69, and even before that, though, you went on a trip hitchhiking with your brother through Europe, and you have told a story on this podcast once before about how you ended up in Italy and you hitchhiked. And you got picked up by a dodgy driver.
In Italy, yeah. We tried to steal my brother's guitar. But we got across to Greece, and then we got down to Crete, and it was hot. And we managed just to get back in time for me to go to university. It was a close run thing.
How did you feel going to Oxford then? Did you feel intimidated by the fact that there you were, like going to this place where there were, admittedly, St Catherine's College was a lot more modern.
It was.
But Oxford probably also had a lot of very old-fashioned and, let's say, upper-class people associated with it.
It did. I mean, I didn't feel intimidated at all. I mean, I'd visited my brother there on several occasions, so I was familiar with the buildings and the layout and everything else. I must admit, I thought that I would be surrounded by people who were much more brilliant than me, and studying English, the fact is that all my contemporaries had read much more than me, and that really was a little bit worrying, that they could talk about Saul Bellow and talk about this and talk about that, and I hadn't read any of it, you know. So they were more academic and just pretty clever, but there were a lot of things which are changing, and I'm glad they did. There were still quite a lot of kids who went to private schools in St Catherine's and certainly across Oxford, lots of them. Yeah. And they were, in the main, different from the state-educated kids, particularly those from the north of England.
You were a state education kid. You didn't go to a private school.
I did not.
You just went to a state school, Yeah. So what was the difference?
I may be exaggerating, but a lot of the private school kids were privileged and uninteresting. So it was the state kids that got into the theatre group and produced plays, and were the prime movers in the student union and things like that. They had more oomph about them, and obviously they wanted to take the opportunity, grasp the opportunity. The whole institution was very old, very traditional. Yeah. The colleges were segregated. There were no mixed colleges. There were 5 women's colleges, and all the rest were men's colleges. Yeah. And there were lots of, social change going on. People who were interested in politics and world affairs would be demonstrating about the Vietnam War. There would be people demonstrating about apartheid in South Africa. And these were very much the state-educated kids who were into all that stuff. I mean, there were a lot of things that changed around that time, not least voting age. And that was a big change. And the age of majority, as it was called, changed from 21 to 18 in 1969. You can look it up. But it was around that time. And, of course, it changed the status of the students. The relationship between the college and the students before that had been that they had been looking after children on behalf of their parents. Yeah. They called it in loco parentis. But suddenly, when the age of majority changed, young adults were coming to the college, and we didn't like things. We thought the course was wrong, and we didn't like being locked out at midnight, because there was a lockout at midnight. You had to be in college by midnight.
Did they think you were all a bunch of upstarts or something, or were they quite open to letting you have
They
certain
weren't
level
open
of...
to it. No, I think there was quite a lot of resistance. But in St. Catherine's, the master was pretty good. But it took a lot of effort to get them to change.
Yeah.
There was graffiti in those days. It was a bit of a... I'm not a great fan of graffiti, but this was political graffiti. Quite interesting, really.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the ancient college of Balliol College, one of the original colleges, was where graffiti would pop up. It was witty. One of them was about the fact that the deans or disciplinarians of the university could fine you or send you down, which means throw you out. So one of the bits of graffiti on Balliol was Deans, spelled D-E-A-N-Z.
Yeah.
Deans means fines, which was a parody on a famous advertisement for Heinz baked beans. Beans means Heinz.
Yeah.
So Deans means fines. And a lot of people refused to pay their fines, and there was a movement about mass staying out late, and all sorts of stuff was going on.
It wasn't to the same extent as it was in Paris.
No, it certainly wasn't. 68 in Paris was violent. 68 in Oxford was passive resistance.
Yeah. Can I fast forward?
Yeah. This is going on a long time.
I know, yeah. We're going to close before too long. Okay. I just want to fast forward to a period that I talked to Mum about, which is, so you've left Oxford, you joined the BBC, you met Mum at the BBC, you got married, and then you had kids. What was it like having kids? Was it as you expected it to be? You had James, and a couple of years later you had me. Was it what you'd expected, or was it?
I think so.
What did you expect?
Well, I don't know. That was it. I was pleased to have two boys, because that's where I'd come from. My older brother and me, we were comfortable with two boys.
Yeah.
And you were super. It's your mum that brought you up, because I was working very hard.
Yeah.
I was into a phase where I had some quite responsible jobs, and they were unsocial hours.
Yeah.
The news was on in the evening, and I wouldn't get in until midnight, and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So she had the bulk of bringing you up, and you were delightful boys, super boys.
All right. Didn't we ever get into trouble? I don't remember that many times.
Not seriously. I think James got into more trouble than you, one way or another. I don't know.
Do you remember anything?
I seem to remember him having his phone stolen or something.
He got into a fight.
Yeah, got into a fight at school.
But I think you weren't that disappointed.
No.
Because he was standing up for himself.
Hey, absolutely. I was actually rather pleased. I shouldn't say so, but... I remember talking to you both about it.
So what has happened?
That you will get bullied at school.
Yeah, because we
just
moved.
Stand by. You will do.
We moved because when I was 9 and James was about 11 or 12, we moved from West London to the West Midlands, and we both started at a new school. And I started at the primary school, and then I started the secondary school from year 1. But James joined the secondary school in year 2, which is difficult because you're suddenly the new kid in this big school with kids who are teenagers and stuff around you. And he ended up getting into a scrap in the playground, and he was being picked on, and he hit the guy back. He punched him, I think, or hit him or something.
And you went,
the other
and
kid
ran to the teacher.
The other kid did. Yes. This is the one who'd been bullying James.
Just hit me.
And then James ended up in the headmaster's office. James remembers that he thinks that he was going to be caned because he would have been one of the very last kids in the country to have been threatened or given the cane, which is listeners, it's a form of punishment that involves being hit on the hand with a wooden stick.
With a whippy stick.
Like a thin whippy stick that smack on the hand or something like that. And the cane, I think, was banned at the mid to late 80s in England. And so we're talking about 1986, 1987 when this happened. And James remembers being told he was going to the headmaster's office and he would be given the cane. And the headmaster essentially showed him the cane and I think even just touched his hand or didn't. He caned him because he had to, but he didn't actually hit him. He just went tap like that, and I think James was probably crying because he had his hand out, and the teacher was like, tap, there you go, now don't do it again. So he got away with it, but yeah, I mean, fair enough, he was standing up for himself.
James told me that the headmaster knew whose fault it was, and it wasn't James.
Right, okay.
Because he knew a little bit about their characters, and he'd probably been briefed by one of the teachers.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I mean, it's partly my fault, because I remember saying to you both, but certainly to James, that you will get teased. You've got a London accent, you'll get teased.
Yeah.
Just ignore them, laugh it off, use your wit, and if you really get seriously bullied, don't be bullied, fight back. And of course, I didn't be expecting to sock somebody in the jaw, but I'm quite pleased he did. And he didn't get bullied again.
No, he didn't. No, fair enough. Yeah, I managed to have pretty much avoid. I got picked on, but I never really got bullied. I didn't fight back, but I also didn't really respond.
No,
it's
pathetic. And if you don't respond, they get tired of picking on you.
Yeah, that's true.
But I was very small when I was at school. When I went to grammar school, physically I was really quite short, quite small.
What do they call you?
Titch Thompson.
Titch
Thompson.
Because titchy is a sort of slang word that means small in English. Yeah. Titch Thompson, they called you.
And when I was in the second year, I was still one of the smallest boys in the school.
Yes.
And I got picked on. But I soon discovered that if I flew at them like a wild cat, they didn't pick on me again. I mean, that's boys in the playground and all that. And I do think that if you're a victim, you have to be non-victim. You basically say, I'm not going to be a victim.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Let's finish with this. So what about now? How do you there's a lot of stuff we skipped over. We can't possibly cover everything. But how do you feel right now at this time of your life? We spent most of the time talking about your late teens and your university time and stuff. And then whoosh all the way back to now. Here it's 2000.
And it is a bit of a whoosh, because as you get older, obviously thoughts of mortality grow. Mm-hmm. You think, how many more years have I got? It might not be very many. And so you're kind of particularly grateful to see your children doing well, and your grandchildren. Special relationship with grandchildren.
Yeah.
And, we've got 3 beauties. And the other thing is that I just don't like getting old.
I really don't. Stupid question, but why not?
Well, I don't know. It's kind of creeps up on you. You say, I can't be this old, and you can't do things like you used to be able to do them, and you get tired, and you groan when you get up from a chair and all that, like people do.
Yeah.
I just don't like that. I'd rather be bouncing and still fit, but I'm afraid those days are gone.
I don't know how to end this.
Well, I'll end with a bit of Hamlet for you. I mean, Hamlet's contemplating death.
Shakespeare's Hamlet, yeah.
Indeed. The context is that he's determined to kill his uncle, who is now the king.
We can all relate to this.
Yeah. But he knows that if he does, he'll be killed himself.
Yes.
So that's his problem, to be alive or not to be dead.
Yeah.
And he says about his death, if it be now, it's not to come. And if it is to come, it won't be now, but it will come.
If it's now, then it's to come.
If it's now,
yes,
I die now,
yeah,
that's the end of it.
Right.
It isn't, I'm not waiting for death. That's stopped. If it is now, it is not to come. If it is to come in the future, if it's going to be happening in the future, it isn't now, but it will come.
So if it's now, then I don't need to worry about it coming. That's right. Is that what that means?
That's it.
So it's like, if it's now, then so be it.
End of the trepidation and anxiety.
At least I don't have to worry about it coming.
That's right.
Whereas if it's not now, then it's still going to come, and that's inevitable. So whatever, in any case, it's going to happen. Yeah, of course.
It's just a way of saying it's going to happen.
You have to just accept it. Yeah, of course. Yeah. I don't think much more needs to be said then after that. who can improve on Shakespeare?
Indeed.
Yeah. All right. Well, Dad, thanks for talking to me about all this stuff. I hope you haven't minded me kind of sitting you down and making you talk about everything.
No, I haven't minded. I repeat what I said at the beginning. I just worry about your audience, or whether they have any interest in this rambling on about the old days.
Are you joking? I'm telling you, the people who love it, of course, will be really happy to listen to this. Some people won't have survived, but it's a long episode. Okay. But I hope it's helped in listening to some English being spoken. Well, the idea is that if people are really riveted, if they find what they're listening to just genuinely gripping and interesting, then their acquisition of English is much more likely and much more effective and easier. Right, that's the theory anyway. But also, people can pick apart what they're hearing and take out bits of language and stuff like that. But in any case, those people who've listened, I'm sure, until this point, have really enjoyed listening to you. So thank you very much.
Okay.
So there you go. That was my dad talking about his life. Thank you very much for Dad for being up for doing this. As always, he's made plenty of contributions to this podcast over the years, and I'm very grateful. So if you are too, if you're grateful too to my dad for doing this episode, then show your gratitude by leaving a comment in the comments section to say thanks and to show your appreciation. Also, listeners, you can wish my dad a happy birthday, because it's his birthday this week. Just a few days after this episode is being published, it is his birthday. So wish my dad a happy birthday in the comments. Okay? So just some thoughts at the end here. Just like with my mum, I feel like this conversation could have gone on so much longer, and I'm obviously still curious about so many things, and I think I probably always will be. Listening back to this conversation while I was editing it, I did think of plenty of other questions which I actually didn't get to ask my dad, mainly because... mainly a conversation goes in different directions and you just follow it wherever it leads, and you can't always branch off into all sorts of different directions all at the same time and sort of explore different angles all at the same time. You just follow a conversation where it leads, and you don't have time to focus in on every single detail in just one episode, one conversation for an hour or something. But other things I could have asked my dad, and perhaps I will ask him next time I get the chance, are, first of all, you heard that he talked about his dad. That's my grandpa, Eric. He died quite young when he was in his 50s, and I never knew him. But I wonder how my dad felt when he lost his dad as a teenager. I think it was when he was at university. I've asked him about it before, but I'm always curious about what kind of effect it had on him. I have to say that it didn't seem to hold him back very much, because my dad and his brother were both very successful, as you could hear from this episode. They were both very successful, both had great careers, and I think had generally happy and good lives, continue to have happy and good lives both at home and at work. But it must have been quite a blow to lose your dad just as you're becoming an adult. Unanswered questions, which, I have to be fair, I've talked to him about it before, but it's always the sort of thing that comes to my mind. Also, my dad was in London during the days of the swinging 60s, and not just in London, but working at that advertising company in Soho, which is a district in central London. And Soho is known as being the kind of heart of that kind of scene in fashion, music and culture in the 60s in London. And 1966 was the kind of pinnacle. 66, 67 was the sort of pinnacle of that scene, which is called swinging London. With all its boutique fashion shops and bars and clubs where all the coolest, hippest people could be seen. And I wonder if he saw any particular examples of that in terms of things like fashion trends or certain people or anything else. What was it like in central London, in Soho, in 1966? Also, coming of age in the mid to late 1960s must have been fascinating. We think of this as a time of sort of partying and free love and all that kind of rock and roll legend. But was that just a small elite group of people who actually did those things, like the rock stars, a certain cultural elite? How did the 60s cultural movement impact my dad's life specifically, or the life of my mum, who was living in another part of the country? Did the whole 60s thing impact most ordinary people, or was it just something that the cultural elite were doing in certain areas or circles? Like we read these books about the Beatles, or indeed any other rock band, whatever, and there's always so much stuff about the significance of the cultural changes that happened in the 60s and the lifestyles, the way their lifestyles changed and stuff like that. It was quite a radical change for a lot of those people. But what about for just other, let's say, more normal people? Also, my dad worked as a journalist in his career, and so what are some of the moments he was part of when he worked as a journalist? What things did he see and experience? Bear in mind, he was foreign news editor at the BBC for years during the 70s and 80s. I think during the 70s, definitely in the early 80s. And then he worked on the evening BBC News programmes in the 80s and 90s, the 6 o'clock news and the 9 o'clock news, the sort of national news programmes. He worked on those as well. And so, he must have been part of some pretty interesting historic moments, and also travelled to some interesting places. He must have been in the newsroom when certain big breaking news stories happened, and they had to decide how they were going to cover them, which stories they would cover. It must have been absolutely fascinating, and I'm curious about what that was like, and also some of the interesting places that he must have travelled to when he worked as foreign news editor. I mean, again, I have actually asked him those things. And only recently he told me about the time he spent in East Germany and East Berlin during the Soviet days when the Berlin Wall was still standing. He actually took a trip to Berlin and was allowed to visit East Berlin during that time. Also, he took a trip to Moscow as well. And so I'm endlessly curious about those things. Why am I mentioning these questions that I didn't actually ask my dad during the episode? I don't know. Maybe this is stuff for a sequel. Similarly, I could do a similar thing with my mum. There's always room for a part 2 for these sorts of things. Anyway, I've got lots of other questions, but there's only so much time, and I expect there will always be unanswered questions and moments when I will suddenly be curious about what feels like large swathes of my parents' personal experience that I don't have information about, and ultimately maybe it's none of my business. Anyway, in the end, I'm just happy to have the opportunity to chat with my parents, whether it's all about family memories and stories, or just even chatting about more trivial things like what's happening in the football at the moment. Leave your comments in the comments section if you enjoyed this conversation. Put my dad's doubts to rest, because he had doubts, as he always does. Are you sure that your listeners are going to find this interesting? Surely they're all going to be bored to death by this. Put my dad's doubts to rest by letting us know in the comments section that you enjoyed the episode, that you listened to it all the way through without becoming a skeleton with headphones on, and wish him a happy birthday. Tell my dad that actually his ramblings were interesting to listen to, and thanks for doing it. Now, if you want more of this kind of thing, if you want more chatting with Dad, you could listen to a few other episodes. So here's a selection of other episodes that you could check out in the episode archive. So there's episode number what? What episode number is this episode? Episode number 252 was called Marooned with My Music, in which my dad chose various favourite pieces of music and then talked more about his life story, including the story of how he met my mum and other things like that. So there's a sort of musical storytelling, life story with musical choices as well. Also, I did episodes a few years ago called Quintessentially British Things, and I did one with James, one with Mum, and one with Dad. The one with Dad, he talked about, I think it was 3 of his favourite aspects of British life and culture, and we recorded it on New Year's Eve 2019 at more or less midnight. My mum had gone to bed, we were still up, we recorded the podcast there and then. It was on the stroke of midnight. Actually, that moment is recorded in the episode. So you can join us as we move from 2019 to 2020. And it's the year of the COVID pandemic. We had no idea what was in store for us. But anyway, you can listen to that moment that my dad and I shared together at the stroke of midnight, New Year's Eve. That's episode 638, called 3 Quintessentially British Things That You Might Not Know About with Dad. As I said, there's also similar episodes with my mum and my brother as well, which you could find. I think they are the previous 2 episodes. Also, episode 372 was called The Importance of Anecdotes in English. That was recorded at the dinner table with my mum, my dad and my brother, and we told some stories, some anecdotes, some funny, strange or frightening stories from our lives, including the story which was briefly mentioned by my dad in today's conversation that you just heard. That's the story about when my dad was hitchhiking through Europe with his brother, and they were tricked by an Italian. I think it was an Italian. Was it Italian? It doesn't matter. They were tricked by a taxi driver who tried to steal my Uncle Peter's guitar. And they got into a kind of a dramatic situation. It was a misadventure, and one of those exciting things that happens when you are a teenager, and one of those things that you always remember. If you want to hear the full story, listen to episode 372, along with the story of how my mum met, was it the president of Burundi or something like that? What was it? What happened? Oh God, what were the funny anecdotes? Meeting the King of Tonga. My mum met the King of Tonga. Now, if you listen to episode 372, you will have to listen to, or you'll get the enjoyment of listening to me, first of all, talking about how we tell anecdotes in English and giving you an English lesson about how we tell stories and the narrative tenses, the verb tenses we use to do them. And then in the second half of the episode, you actually hear some real anecdotes from my parents. Mum's anecdote was meeting the King of Tonga. Tonga is a Polynesian kingdom of more than 170 islands, and my mum met the king of Tonga, and he was very keen to talk to my mum for some reason. There's James's infamous anecdote about a misadventure he had when he travelled to Hastings, and he ended up missing his last train home, and he had to find somewhere to stay, and he ended up crashing out on someone's sofa, and things got a bit weird. So that's my brother's Hastings story. Hastings is a town in England. And then my dad's anecdote was about hitchhiking in Italy, as I mentioned. And then there's my anecdote, which was a pretty frightening experience I had when I lived in Liverpool. So if you want to hear those stories, you can listen to episode 372. We're nearly finished here, listeners. I just wanted to mention something about the Rick Thompson report. You might wonder about episodes of the Rick Thompson report, which, if you don't know, is a series I do or have done with my dad, where we talk about news and politics, particularly UK politics. It's a very popular series. Most of the episodes focused on Brexit. We did most episodes of the Rick Thompson report during the whole Brexit saga. So you might think, Luke, when's the next Rick Thompson report? Well, I mean, basically my dad is retired now, you know, and believe it or not, I mean, he's got semi-retired. He still does various other bits of work, and he writes a lot these days. He writes books. He's been on the podcast to talk about the 3 books that he's written. He's working on a 4th one at the moment. But he's otherwise, in terms of his journalistic career, he's more or less retired these days. And believe it or not, I think it is quite demanding to do episodes like the Rick Thompson report. And bear in mind that I have a relatively large audience, and it's kind of a big ask to regularly get my dad to come on and explain and talk about all the most complex current stories in the news today. It's quite a big thing to ask him to do. Also, the news these days, particularly internationally, is so incredibly charged and sensitive that it's not all that much of an attractive prospect to wade into it all and to talk about it all. And yeah, so, I mean, as I said, my dad is more or less retired now, so I don't want to impose on him too much, basically. But never say never. Maybe we'll do something. It's not like he's absolutely put his foot down and said, no, that's it, no more. I've just kind of stopped asking him because I started to realise that it's probably quite a lot to ask, you know. He's doing me a favour every time I ask him. But, you know, maybe we'll do something at some point. But I just wanted to kind of let you know what's going on with that. The last time we talked about politics, my dad and me, or mainly the last time my dad talked about politics, because in those episodes, I don't really need to do much talking. The last time was about, I think it was after the latest UK general election in which the Labour Party and their leader Keir Starmer came back to power. Things are pretty complicated for Starmer at the moment. Maybe if there is a big change in the UK at some point, like, for example, a new leadership contest, we can talk about that. But otherwise, I think that the Rick Thompson report is probably off the air for the time being. I hope you understand. But anyway, I'm happy that I did this recording today with my dad and also last week's one with my mum. Happy birthday to Dad. Thanks also to Mum. And thank you again for listening to this episode and for commenting. I'm away on holiday next week. My family and I are taking a break and doing the thing that French people do at this time of year, which is essentially go east and head to the mountains for some fresh air and some snow and maybe some skiing. We're not actually going to ski this time, my wife and me, but my daughter is. She'll be doing some skiing, but my wife and me are going to just hang out with our little 2-year-old son. Hold on, no, sorry, I mean my wife and I are going to hang out with our 2-year-old son. Right? I just needed to make that correction. I couldn't let that one go. That was a little slip. You don't say, my wife and me are going to hang out. It's my wife and I are going to hang out. Because you wouldn't say, me is going to hang out, unless you're Tarzan. But anyway, my wife and I are going to hang out with our little 2-year-old son. And it's his first time in the snowy mountains. It will be his first time enjoying proper snow up in the mountains. And it should be fun. I think we're going to do some sledging. I think he's going to absolutely love that. Sledging, that's like a thing you sit in and it slides down the side of the mountain or the hill on the snow. And he's going to love that. So that should be fun. There will be an episode next week as well, which I've already recorded. It's a short story episode. I hope you enjoy it. But otherwise, until next time, I'll just say goodbye. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. If you've been watching the video version, don't forget to like and subscribe and tell your friends about Luke's English podcast. Have a lovely morning, afternoon, evening or night, wherever you are in Lapland. Okay, and be excellent to each other. And I'll speak to you next time. But for now, it's just time to say goodbye. Bye, bye, bye.